Assalamualaikum everybody. It's Dr. Usman. How are you people? Can you listen me please? How is everybody? Alhamdulillah, fine. That's great. Can you listen me? Sophia Hakim, can you listen me please? Just write it down so that I want to make it sure that you can listen to me. Okay, that's great. Sania Kumar, Bhatti, very good. Excellent. So today's topic is actually about the its metabolic acidosis and alkalosis. So it is regarding the acid base balance. So that is the most important topic. I will today discuss with you from the book of Davidson rather than on the PowerPoint presentation because I did not make it so. So and it's very easy to understand it because we will be reading this topic from your book that will give you a little bit of the good concept. So normally the what is happening is it's the we look for the pH to find out the acid base disorder. So investigation when what you do is you do the arterial blood tests. In that, first of all, you will look for the pH. So pH of the arterial system is normally around 77.40, corresponding to the hydrogen concentration of 40 nanomole per liter. An increase in hydrogen concentration leads to decrease in pH and similarly in bicarbonate increase that causes the increase in pH. So under normal circumstances, hydrogen concentration remains fairly stable. So there are a lot of physiological, variety of physiological mechanisms to maintain the hydrogen concentration in the extracellular fluid. And the most important one is the so it's the buffer system actual tissue and the blood which maintain this what we call it the system. Okay, so it maintains the hydrogen ion concentration in the extracellular fluid in the circulation. Because if the vesicosis there are a lot of other problems with the problem. And to compensate for the hydrogen, normally carbon dioxide is excreted by the and the bicarbonate by the kidney. So there is a relationship between the hydrogen, carbon dioxide, and the bicarbonate at three different stages of the organ systems. So normally there are two types of acidosis: metabolic acidosis, respiratory acidosis, and it depends upon whether the primary lesion is due to the metabolic disturbance or it is primary to the respiratory disturbance. So if someone gets a primary change in the metabolic disturbance, so there will be a secondary change or compensatory changes in the respiratory part. That will call the compensation. Similarly, if there is a disturbance in the respiratory system, so there will be a compensation in the venous system to compensate that. So both of those systems they work together, though the action will be reciprocal to each other. So depending upon that, you will find out that where the problem lies. Is it from the metabolic or is it from the respiration? So, so respiratory compensation for acid-base disturbance can occur quickly mean it doesn't take longer time, but renal takes longer. In response to acid accumulation, pH change in the brainstem stimulates the ventilative drive to reduce the PCO2 and increase the pH. So conversely, systemic alkalosis lead to the inhibition of ventilation and causes a rise in the PCO2 and reduction in the pH. So both of these systems. So the respiratory system, as it is in the brainstem over there. So any change in the PCO2 has a direct effect on that. So the kidney, on the other hand, provides a third line of defense against the dysfunction when the acid accumulates due to chronic respiratory or metabolic non-renal causes. The kidney has the long-term capacity to enhance urea excretion of acid. So it takes longer time and it works with a longer duration and its the effect lasts longer. So what happened at the renal level? Normally, the regulation of acid-base balance occurs at several sites in the kidney. The proximal tube reabsorbs 85% of the filtered bicarbonate ion through the mechanism of hydrogen secretion. It's given in the figure over here. This is dependent on the enzyme carbonic anhydrase both in the cytoplasm of the tubular cell and on the luminal surface of the blood border of the membrane. So the breast border and the membrane, both of them, they work together. The system has a high capacity but does not lead to a significant acidification of the luminal fluid. So it has a high capacity, but there is a limitation. It cannot cause the huge acidification. Distal nephrons, on the other hand, has a very important role in determining the net acid excretion by the kidney. In the intercalated cells of body, collecting tube pumps and the other ventricular cell, acid is secreted into the lumen by hydrogen ATPase. This excreted acid is generally generated in the tubular cells from the hydration of the carbon dioxide to form carbonic acid, which dissociate hydrogen into the lumen and bicarbonate in that passes across the basolateral membrane into the blood. So the secreted hydrogen contributes reabsorption of any renal residual bypass present in the renal fluid, but also contributes less in the net acid loss from the body. So these are the primary mechanisms over here. That there is a phosphate and ammonia, they are also important because they are filtered and they are combined with the hydrogen in the distal tubule to form the dihydrogen phosphate, which is excreted in the urine along with the sodium. Ammonia is generated within the tubular cell by reevaluation of the nucleic acid. And this process you need to understand it a little bit in detail if you are interested more in the acid-base balance. But at your level, no one will be asking these questions in detail about them, but you need to know that. So these two mechanisms remove approximately 1 millimole per kg of hydrogen from the body per day, is equal to the non-volatile acid organism from the diet. So how the patient presents, the most important is with the acid-base system. Patient with disturbance of acid-base balance may present clinically either with the effect of tissue malfunction due to disturbed pH. How does it occur? Such that there will be altered cardiac or central nervous system. So whenever there is a cardiac involvement and whenever there is a central nervous system involvement, so there will be a disturbance in the acid-base balance because then the compensating changes will occur both at the cardiovascular level and the nervous system level. If someone has, for example, a cardiac failure or cardiogenic shock, then what happens? Lactic acidosis occurs, which accumulates in the body and it causes has the effect on the kidneys and other organs, even blood pressure as well on the tissue metabolism. Similarly, if someone gets more metabolic than central nervous system, it's so sensitive, it has a secondary effect to that. And with the secondary changes will be occurring in the respiratory system as a response to the underlying metabolism. What is that called is a proximal respiration during the metabolic acidosis. It's also sometimes called the chain stroke breathing, I think. So that is the compensatory. It's not the primary. So if someone has a primary respiratory problem, then again it will affect the heart, it will affect the central nervous system and the kidney. So the clinical picture is often dominated by the cause of the acid-base changes such as uncontrolled diabetes mellitus, primary lung disease. These are the two main. And the third one is the poisoning or the lactic acidosis secondary to the drugs as well. So there are huge number of causes for that. Frequently, the acid-base response only becomes evident when the venous plasma bicarbonate concentration is noted to be abnormal or when the full arterial blood gas analysis shows abnormality of the pH, PaCO2 or bicarbonate. So, if you are having any suspicion of the acid-base difference, the investigation of choice will be arterial blood gases, and then you will check for the serum bicarbonate level as well. So these two tests will give you the diagnosis about that. And most of the time there is it's not a clear cut picture that metabolic acidosis or metabolic alkalosis or respiratory acidosis. So there is a mixed picture as well. So those will come later. So the base excess or base deficit can also be calculated from the. This is difference between the patient bicarbonate and the normal bicarbonate in vitro with the pH tested. Calculation of these basis excess are deficits, particularly useful in patients with combined respiratory and the metabolic acidosis. So you will need to look at what is the base excess of to find out what is it a mixed picture or is it an isolated finding. So most common abnormality of the blood in the gas parameters are shown in over here. We will see that. Note that the terms acidosis and closus strictly refer to the underlying direction of the acid change, while acidemia and alkalemia more correctly refer to the net change present in the blood. Interpretation of the arterial blood gases is described over there. You need to look at that page as well if you want to have a very good understanding. So what happened in the metabolic acidosis? In metabolic disturbance, respiratory compensation is almost immediate. So the predictor compensatory change in PaCO2 is achieved soon after the onset of metabolic disturbance. In respiratory disorders, on the other hand, a small initial change in bicarbonate occurs as a result of chemical carbonic acid, largely with the red vessel, but over days or weeks, the kidney achieve further compensatory changes in the bicarbonate concentration as a result of non-adjustment in the acid secreting capacity. So, as I told you that the respiratory compensation occurs very quickly, but the kidney compensation takes longer time. So therefore, this process is complicated, and there are physiological mechanisms behind that. So when the clinically obtained acid parameters do not accord with the predicted compensation, a mixed acid-base disturbance must be suspected. So here are the principal patterns of the acid-base disturbance. In metabolic acidosis, blood this hydrogen ion will be more than 40, bicarbonate level will be less than 24, that's a cutoff value. And PaCO2 will be less than 5.3 kPa. PaCO2 fall in kPa is equal to this is the given value given. So in metabolic alkalosis there will be less hydrogen ion but more bicarbonate ion, and PaCO2 will be more as well. So that PaCO2 will be compensatory. So in metabolic acidosis, bicarbonate will be up, will be metabolic as bicarbonate will be low, hydrogen will be up, and PaCO2 will be low. In metabolic alkalosis, bicarbonate will be more, PaCO2 will be more, and hydrogen will be less. Similarly, in respiratory acidosis, the hydrogen will be more and the PaCO2 more. So in compensation, bicarbonate will get more. In respiratory alkalosis, hydrogen will be low, PaCO2 will be low, and bicarbonate will be low as well. So these are how will you look at that, and pH will move accordingly. So there are some causes of the metabolic acidosis. There are two types of metabolic acid normally we say. One is with the normal anion cap and other with the increased anion cap. So what are the causes for that? With the normal anion gas, these are the ingestion or infusion of the inorganic and acid, gastrointestinal bicarbonate loss, and the renal tubular acidosis. So what normally we do, and what are the causes of increased anion gap? They are the endogenous acid load that produced in the body. So most of the poisoning, a lot of when you take the acids, in that there will be normal anion gap. But if it is produced inside the body, for example, diabetic ketoacidosis, starvation ketoacidosis, lactic acidosis, renal failure acidosis, they all lead to increased anion gaps. On the other hand, that when you take other like poisoning, in that aspirin poisoning, methanol poisoning, ethanol glycol poisoning, all they will go to cause the increased anion gap acidosis. So in that, what you do normally, you measure the ketone level, you measure the blood sugar, and these lactic acidosis can occur in the shock, all sort of shock, cardiogenic shock, hypoglycemic shock. Okay. So in the liver diseases and in the drugs, so they are now metabolic acidosis occur when an acid other than the carbonic acid due to the retention accumulates in the body, resulting in a fall in plasma bicarbonate. The pH fall that would otherwise occur is blunted by the hyperventilation, resulting in PCO. So when the pH fall, it gives send a message to the brainstem that the acid is accumulating. So try to do the compensation as quickly as possible. In the result, the patient will start hyperventilating and his PCO2 will reduce down to compensate. If the kidneys are the intact and the primary cause of acidosis is not renal erosion, the kidney can gradually increase acid secretion over days to weeks and restore a new steady state. So it means that whenever there is a metabolic acidosis, whenever there is an acidosis, so lungs respond quickly, but kidney start doing the compensation not within hours, but rather in the days to the weeks. So there are two patterns of the metabolic acidosis, which normally depending upon the nature of the accumulation of it. In pattern A, when the mineral acid such as hydrochloric acid accumulates, or when there is a primary bicarbonate as buffered from that such a fluid, there is no addition to the plasma of the new acid. In this case, the anion gap calculated as the difference between the main major ion sodium plus potassium and the cation is normal. So mean that the difference between sodium and potassium minus the chloride per bicol is small. Since the plasma chloride increases to replace the depleted bicarbonate, this gap is normally around 12 to 16 millimole per liter, or 12 to 16 millimole per liter, and is made of the anions such as phosphate, sulfate, multiple negative or the plasma protein. So whenever someone comes with the presentation of the metabolic acidosis or acidosis, so major is serum sodium and potassium, chloride and bicarbonate. So that will help you to calculate the anion. So if it's you will see whether it's 12 to 16, if it's more than 16, so it is increased anion. Normal anion metabolic acid pressure is will be due to a bicarbonate loss and diarrhea, where the clinical diagnosis is generally obvious, or to a renal tubular acidosis. So there will be either bicarbonate loss or there will be a renal tubular acidosis, which will help you give up. But in pattern B, there will be accumulation of acid, and that is the corresponding anion which adds to the unmeasured anion, this anion cap, while the chloride concentration remain normal. The cause is usually apparent from the clinical features such as uncontrolled diabetes mellitus, renal failure, shock, or vices. So, and these are the suggested by the symptoms such as visual complaints in the methanol or alcohol poisoning. And it is noteworthy that a number of causes of increased anionic acid doses are associated with alcoholism. So we normally our society uh, do not drink too much alcohol, but we do see a lot of cases in the peripheries. where the people they drink alcohol, and that is not a pure form of that. I mean, there is more methanol and other intoxications along with that, so that leads to the more annoying acidosis. Therefore, if you see that a lot of people they have drunk and brought in the hospital with the metabolic acidosis, in those the mortality normally is very high because it is difficult to diagnose them over there and to manage them. So it is primarily the diabetes mellitus, and once the renal failure is ruled out or there is no history of shock, then either the drugs or the alcoholism is the main culprit. So there can be a starvation ketosis, but you can look at the patient and there will be signs of other malnutrition as well. Lactic acidosis can occur and the intoxication by methanol or ethylene glycol lead to the anion gap acidosis, and mortality is usually is very high in this situation if someone has methanol or this acidosis. The third one is the lactic acidosis. The diagnosis of lactic acidosis is confirmed by the measurement of the plasma lactate level, which is increased over the normal maximum level of 2 millimole by SF4. Nowadays, it is serum lactate level is measured now. Every patient who comes up with the severe respiratory tract infection, in the sepsis, in cardiac failure, or with the multi-organ failure. So it's the routine practice nowadays to check the serum lactate level, and nowadays depending upon the level, the management is done accordingly. Nowadays, it was not done majorly routinely years ago. So there are two types of the lactic acidosis. Number one is type 1 called, and second is the type 2. Type 1 is due to tissue hypoxia or peripheral generation of lactate as in patient with circulatory failure or shock. So that is called type 2. Type 1, type 2 is due to the impaired metabolism of lactate as in liver disease or by a number of drugs and toxins including metformin, which inhibit lactate metabolism. So anti-diabetic drugs, not only metformin but the new agents, they are also causing the lactic acidosis. So we do see now with like empagliflozin, dapagliflozin. So these drugs also cause the lactic acidosis. So whenever the studies they are done to look for the efficacy and the side effects are safety data of the anti-diabetic medication, they always include the lactic acidosis, and then they compare it with the metformin. So metformin is the main culprit and the new anti-diabetic agent as well. So anyone who comes with the diabetes, he may have a type 1 lactic acidosis or type 2 lactic acidosis, or combination, because the diabetic patient who present with the emergency department with the ketoacidosis, they can have a circulatory failure, they can have a shock as well, and they can have a metabolic acidosis secondary to the drugs as well. So be careful about that. So it's lactic acid, what we call it, lactate level will let you know, but it is not again a straightforward, because lactate level will be raised in the circulatory failure as well, in the shock due to sepsis as well, and due to the blood. So the question will be that is it the first presentation or is it the second, and we need to look for the other parameters. Now, the third one is the renal tubular acidosis. Renal tubular acidosis should be suspected when there is a hyperchloremic acidosis with a normal anion gap and no evidence of gastrointestinal disturbance. Means there is no excessive history of vomiting, there is a serum chloride level is up, and there is acidosis with the normal anion. So what you do, you will measure the urine pH is inappropriately high, more than 5.5, in the presence of systemic acidosis. RTA can be caused by one of the three processes: impaired bicarbonate, then reabsorption the proximal tubule, that is called the proximal RTA, impaired acid secretion in the late distal tubule or cortical leptin, that is called the classical disclot, or impaired sodium reabsorption in the late distal or cortical, which is associated with reduced secretion potassium and hydrogen ion. So this is called hyperkalemic distal RTA. So there are three types of proximal RTA, classical distal RTA, and then hyperkalemic distal RTA. In those situations, in the first two one, there will be increased chloride, there will be acidosis, there will be increased anion gap, and urine pH will be high, but there will be no gastrointestinal distress. But in the distal, hyperactive distal RTA, along with the hyperkalemic acidosis and the normal anion gap. So these are the diagnostic. So in this situation, what you will do if someone has a metabolic acidosis, always look for the first of all the pH, then the bicarbonate, then do the arterial blood gases, look for the CO2, then look for the chloride ion and the potassium ion. If someone has a hyperkalemia and with the hyperchloremic acidosis, means chloride will be up. It means he has a RTA. But if someone has a hyperkalemia and there is a normal chloride, it means that patient can have a metabolic acidosis or lactic acidosis. Along with that, we will look for the diabetes or other condition. In most of the time, it's a diabetic patient who present with that. When we look at those patients, they have a hyperkalemia, they have a dehydration, and chloride ion will be low in that situation because the patient will be dehydrated. Okay, and there will be loss of electrolytes, and in those situations, sodium will be low or can be high, but chloride will be low. So this is the diet. But most of the time, you see hyperkalemia in the diabetic ketoacidosis. So various subtypes of RTA recognized, and the most common are the 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 inherited form RTA due to accumulation in the genes and that regulate its bicarbonate. Just a minute, no, my mic is not working. Hello. जी चलो ठीक है हाँ बिल्कुल ठीक है मैं निकाल Okay, so the various subtypes of RT are recognized and the most common are shown in the this we can leave it. So the inherited form of RTA also due to the mutation in the gene that regulates the bicarbonate transport in the renal tubule. So these can be there can be genetic causes and there can be acquired causes. However, RTA is often an acquired disorder, and in these circumstances, the metabolic acidosis may serve as an early clue to the underdiagnosis. So, if someone has acquired RTA, so metabolic acidosis may be the early presentation. So, a number of features allow differentiation of types of RTA. Proximal RTA is frequently associated with urinary wasting of amino acids, phosphates, and glucose, as well as bicarbonate and potassium. Patients with this disorder can lower the urine pH when the acidosis is severe and plasma bicarbonate levels have fallen below 16, since the distal pH secretion are intact. In the classic form of the distorted, however, acid accumulation is relentless and progressive, resulting in calcium from the bone and consequent osteomalacia or calcinuria. So if someone, particularly the kids, they get the osteomalacia with the hypercalcinuria and with the hyperkalemia, with the acidosis, so always think about the renal tubular acidosis. So these are the causes congenital are required. So in that there is a proximal renal tubular acidosis. This is the classical distal tubular acidosis, and then the hyperkalemic distal tubular acidosis. In proximal, they will be inherited. One, Fanconi syndrome, then cystinosis, Wilson's disease, paraproteinemia, myeloma, amyloidosis, hyperparathyroidism, heavy metals, drugs, and in the classical one there will be inherited autoimmune. Then here, if see distal renal tubular acidosis, so there is a lot of involvement of the autoimmune diseases. SLE is very common in those. Sjogren's syndrome is very common. Then hyperglobulinemia. So hyperglobulinemia, it does occur in SLE and Sjogren's syndrome as well. So all these nearly they are the same thing, that it is a immunoglobulin based disease which causing the distal classical distal renal tubular acidosis. So in that, clue will be that if someone has a history of systemic erythematosus, Sjogren's syndrome, these features, and they develop metabolic acidosis, always think about the renal tubular acidosis. Then lithium and erythropoietin they can. For the hyperkalemic distal renal tubular acidosis, there will be working hypoaldosteronism, primary obstructive uropathy, renal transplant rejection, amyloid and spironolactone because they cause the hyperkalemia. So these are the diseases which cause the hyperkalemia. So proximal one, the classical distal one, and then hyperkalemic one, renal tubular acidosis. So how will we manage these patients? The first step in management of acidosis is to identify and correct the underlying cause whenever possible. This may involve controlling diarrhea, treating diabetes mellitus, correcting stopping drugs that might cause the condition, or using dialysis to remove the toxins. So why they would write down the dialysis to remove the toxin? Because the only sometimes the best way to quickly resolve the metabolic acidosis if in case someone has taken the drugs is the dialysis, because they will take out the toxin and the patient will get better with that. That is the quickest way. So then, since metabolic acidosis is frequently associated with sodium and water depletion, resuscitation with intrafluid venous fluid is often needed. So this is what is it that about? What is the lesson from this is that always if you suspect a patient with metabolic acidosis, always start the patient on the fluids. So rehydrate the patient. In that, what you will do, you will correct the shock. If someone has a diabetes mellitus, you will again correct the shock. It will help for the diarrhea as well, and then you will correct the electrolyte imbalance as well. So, therefore, the sodium and water depletion, if you correct it, along with that, urine output will increase and the kidney will start functioning properly, and they can start trying to get rid of the excess acid. So resuscitation is always the first step. Any patient whom you see who has a metabolic acidosis, always put an IV line in, start the patient on take the blood sample for the arterial blood, for the venous bicarbonate, for the CBC, for the liver function test, kidney function test, and then serum bicarbonate level, albumin, protein, and if you are if you have in the private setup, then you ask for the immunoglobulin as well, and start the patient on, put a wide bore needle in, and start the patient on IV fluids. It will help you to manage the patient. Now, the most frequently the asked question according sometimes to you people are clinically is the use of intrabicarbonate in the setting is always a controversial issue, because rapid correction of acidosis can induce hypokalemia or a fall in plasma ionized calcium. So therefore these are the two problems. So if you are starting them on, always look for the serum calcium level and the serum potassium level. So the use of bicarbonate infusion is best reserved for the situation where the underlying disorder cannot be readily corrected and the acidosis is severe. For example, hydrogen is more than 100 nanomole per liter, or pH is less than 7. So if you see a patient, so that are the what we call, take the message from here, that the indication for the bicarbonate in the metabolic acidosis. What are those? If someone has a severe acidosis, mean hydrogen ion is more than 100 nanomole per liter and pH is less than 7. In that situation, you can start the patient on monitor the serum potassium and the serum calcium. Then the acidosis in The acidosis can sometimes be controlled by treating the underlying cause, but supplement of sodium potassium bicarbonate are usually also necessary in type 1 and type 2 RTA to achieve a target plasma bicarbonate level of 18 millimole per liter annum. Why is this over here that we are giving the patient supplement sodium and potassium in renal tubular acidosis? Because in that there is involvement of the sodium and potassium channels, so there is a loss of sodium and potassium. So in that you will give a bicarbonate as a protein. Wait. Okay, so a loop diuretic NRC, if someone has a type 4 RTA, loop diuretic thiazide or fluorocortisone may be effective in correcting the acidosis and the hyperkalemia. Now, this is the so far about the metabolic acidosis, and now we will talk about metabolic alkalosis. Metabolic alkalosis is characterized by the increase in the plasma bicarbonate concentration and the plasma pH. So it is less common as compared to what we call it metabolic acidosis. So there will be increase in plasma bicarbonate concentration and the plasma pH. Those both they will go up, and there will be a compensatory rise in PCO2 by due to hypoventilation, but this is limited by the need to avoid hypox. So there is a limitation because the respiratory rate cannot go too down, okay, because there is a chance that he can develop a hypoxia. So therefore, it's difficult to manipulate this. The causes are best classified by the accompanying changes that successful fluid. Hypovolemic metabolic acidosis is the most common one. This can cause by the vomiting, in which acid-rich fluid is lost directly from the body, or by treatment with the loop diuretic or the thiazide diuretic. So these are the three causes: vomiting, excessive vomiting, or someone has taken the too high dose of loop diuretic, or has taken the thiazides, for example. Both loop diuretic and the thiazide diuretic, both of them taken. In case of sustained vomiting, loss of gastric acid is the immediate cause of alkalosis, but several other factors to have to sustain and apply the context of the depletion. Loss of sodium and fluid leads to hypovolemia and secondary hyperaldosteronism, triggering proximal sodium bicarbonate reabsorption and additional acid secretion by the distal tubule, that is a compensatory mechanism. So hypokalemia occurs due to potassium loss in the vomitus and the kidney as a result of secondary hyperaldosteronism, and it itself is a stimulus to the acid secretion. So additionally, the compensatory rise in PaCO2 further enhance tubular acid secretion. The net result is sustained metabolic alkalosis with an inappropriately acid urine, which cannot be corrected until the deficit in the circulatory volume should be replaced. So again, in this situation, you have to correct the electrolyte imbalance, keep the fluid as well, and then see the situation. That is a hypovolemic metabolic acidosis. Then there is a normovolemic. Normovolemic or hypovolemic metabolic occurs when bicarbonate retention and volume expansion occur simultaneously. Classical conditions there which causes are primary hyperaldosteronism, Pound syndrome, Cushing disease, corticosteroid therapy. These are the conditions. We do not see, as it is very commonly used, hydrocortisone, but we do not see because there are a lot of compensating mechanisms. Occasionally, overuse of antacid salt for treatment of dyspepsia produces a similar pattern, but it is rare as well. So in that, so how will you approach this patient? So in with metabolism, this alkalosis. So first of all, see whether the patient has vomiting. If someone has vomiting, then look for the gastric loss of hydrogen chloride ion, sodium chloride, and potassium chloride. So if someone has a hydrogen chloride out, metabolic alkalosis. If someone has a hypovolemia, then there will be proximal sodium, increased proximal sodium bicarbonate reabsorption, and then it will lead to metabolic alkalosis. If someone has a hypovolemia, renin and aldosterone system, it will increase the distal hydrogen secretion. So there will be excess hydrogen excretion in that, and that will lead to metabolic acidosis. If someone has a hypokalemia with low chloride as well, they will cause the distal hydrogen secretion, renal ammonia synthesis, and that will lead to potassium secretion and when the potassium will be secreted, that will lead to metabolic alkalosis. So how are they presenting clinically? Apart from manifestation of underlying cause, there can be a few symptoms signs related to alkalosis itself. When the rise in systemic pH is abrupt, plasma ionized calcium falls, and signs of increased neuromuscular irritability such as tetany may develop. So when there is a pH is high pH, so plasma calcium goes down, and people they can develop a tetany, and it's also called the carpopedal spell. In that the finger there is a typical posture. If you write it in the Google about the picture of tetany, they will show you the exact situation of the hand. How does it looks like? So you can see it on the internet over there. So management will be metabolic alkalosis with hypovolemia, corrected with the intravenous fluid of 0. Normal saline. Why do we give normal saline? Because we need to keep the sodium level within the normal limit, and we can keep the potassium as well. One of the great surgeon in Ireland used to say there are two types of fluid. One is the normal saline, other is the abnormal saline. So okay, he said that fluid of resuscitation is normal saline, and all other fluids which are used called abnormal saline. So they are used for different purposes. In that, radium lactate is the half normal saline is the then the crystallite as well, the colloids as well. So these are normal saline is the fluid which normally has the same concentration as we have it in the circulation. So this reverses the secondary hyperaldosteronism and allows the kidney to squeeze that themselves in the urine. So this will help to stabilize the patient or to keep the metabolic alkalosis. In a metabolic alkalosis with normal or increased volume, treatment should focus on the management of the underlying part. It depends upon that. So how will you in metabolic alkalosis? How will you differentiate between them? In metabolic alkalosis, in conclusion, pH will be up. Bicarbonate will be. I will go to show it for you. So it will metabolic alkalosis. So what will happen in acidosis? pH will be up. Again, hydrogen will be more, and the bicarbonate will be low. Metabolic acidosis. In metabolic alkalosis, what will happen? Hydrogen will be low, bicarbonate will be up, and PCO2 will be up as well. Will be up as well as a compensation. So pH here pH will be low, here pH will be high. Here bicarbonate will be low, bicarbonate will be up, PCO2 will be less, PCO2 will be up. So to differentiate between metabolic and respiratory infections. Also metabolic acidosis and alkalosis. So it's the pH. Depending upon the pH, always look at the ACG or the ABG. See the pH, then the bicarbonate, then the PCO2. They will give you the. Any questions? So I will. Yes. So any questions? Because this topic needs you will understand this topic with the interactive discussion, not by reading the book and not by giving the lecture. So this is more sort of interactive discussion that will clear up the concerns. So let me know. So any question if you have. No question. Very good. Are you people listening? Very sluggish response. So it means either you have open up the what we call it the lecture and yourself are sleeping, or if you are watching it with the sleepy head. Very good. So renal tubular acidosis. Very good question, Hassan Sheikh. So renal tubular acidosis, there will be acidosis. So renal tubular acidosis, in that there will be acidosis, and depend upon it will be hyper. There will be an increased chloride. Okay, and there will be a low bicarbonate, high blood hydrogen ion, and along with that, people they can get a low potassium as well. Depending on the site whether it's a proximal renal tubular acidosis or is it a distal tubular acidosis. There can be symptoms, other symptoms for that. So I will show you here. Uh, so there will be what we call it. There will be so there will be what we call acidosis. There will be serum increase chloride. There will be increased bicarbonate. There will be low. No, there will be increased hydrogen ion. There will be low bicarbonate, and then there will be a can be a hyperkalemia. So that is if someone has a high potassium along with the high chloride ion. Okay, so this is the hyperkalemia. This is the hypochloremia, and this is the hyperkalemia. So if someone has a hyperkalemia, he will be having a distal RTA. If someone has a hyperchloremia, he will be having a renal tubular acidosis. Okay, because normally you do not get it in either with the normal anion cap. So there will be the anion cap will be normal, pH will be low, chloride will be up, and potassium can be up, can be normal. So in that, and bicarbonate, so sorry, carbon dioxide level will be low. So that will you will diagnose that this patient has a renal tubular acidosis. So to find out the cause, that is the main problem. So in that situation, you will look at that whether he has a is it a classical distal one or is it a hyperkalemic? If someone has a distal only classical one, then we look for the autoimmune diseases and think about the this amphotericin or the lithium drugs. Are the drugs are the toxin? So if someone has a high potassium, then think about hyperaldosteronism, obstructive uropathy, renal transplant rejection, or the diabetics. In this, potassium will be high, in this the potassium will be low, but generally here in this cohort there will be low pH, high hydrogen ion, low bicarbonate ion, low carbon dioxide ion, and there will be normal anion. So what will be the management? Management, it depends upon the cause. Depending upon the cause, you will manage. And the first line therapy at your level will be investigate the patient. How will you investigate the patient? In that you will do the arterial blood gases, then you will do urinary electrolytes, serum electrolytes, renal functions, okay, and measure the blood sugar as well. After that, look for the cardiac causes, and after that, what you do is replace the start the patient on the IV fluids if he looks like dehydrated. Do the serum lactate level as well. Check it that start the patient on the IV fluids and then look for the other causes and we investigate the patient accordingly. The flow chart there, I did not bring the flow chart honestly because it's a very broad topic. And I can find one and I can when you come back, I can leave it for you because I'm going on holidays. So I will leave it for you people for the metabolic acidosis and closer to chart one. But normally that there is a flow chart that can help you but it's because this time it's a very broad topic. There are huge articles on that, and we do not see few bits and pieces. They are explained in everything. But there is definitely a flow chart. I will find one and will leave for you people. But generally, for the metabolic acidosis or alkalosis, you always have to rule out the dehydration. So always start the patient on the fluids, send the metabolic, like check the blood sugar. Okay, check the ABGs, and ABGs will give you some clue whether it's because of the respiratory problem or because of the renal problem. And if someone gets a renal impairment, that in that you will always involve the nephrologist, and in that you have to assess the patient whether this patient needs immediately dialysis or we can wait for the dialysis. But during the wait, if someone waiting for the dialysis, always try to correct the fluid balance. Give the IV fluids. This is the first line what we call the management for the acidosis anemia. Any more questions? So as Hassan is asking for the metabolic acidosis and alkalosis, so I will leave the flow chart by name for you. If your other colleagues they want to get it, then you have to take the course from them. Is that okay, Hassan? Great. So any more question? So when is the rheumatology paper? So when is the rheumatology paper? No answer. Okay. So I will leave the I will leave that if you're not asking for the questions, so I will leave the meeting. Is that okay? Should I leave the meeting? Okay, no answer. So I will